Greetings and salutations to all you folks out there. Welcome in to the Legend of the Stars tournament final. It has been a long time coming. It's been a couple of months. We've been having qualifier rounds. We've had backup rounds. We've been getting into it. Whittling down the player base to the best of the best. And right now we've got two of those people going at it. Turin Bar versus Thomas Hiet on Syrtis Major, a 1900 versus a 2000 rated player. As always, it will be a pleasure to watch, strictly for the sake of having a decent learning experience. So let's go ahead and see what these guys are doing for their early builds, and then we'll roll on through this tournament as we move forward, of course, getting ever closer to deciding who gets that $500 prize in the end. Thomas Hiet is dropping a land factory with 2 power generators, and then you'll notice he's using move orders to walk closer to these mass extractors so that he can build them in a timely fashion without wasting any time whatsoever. We've got 2 engineers out first. Those are going to drop hydro, 4 power generators, definitely going for an air factory after that. You can see him laying in his build order as quickly as he possibly can. Probably going to run out some tanks a little bit later to go and guard against intrusions into his expansion. Then the ACU is going to grab a little bit of mass and those little rocks scattered around the edge, and then edge build 2 land factories up on the top edge, leading into an additional air factory on the outside. Turin is rocking Aeon. This is going to give him some of those epic auroras for action in the mid portion of the game. Turin is going to edge build 2 factories as well. Has definitely skimped out on his power generators, a bit more so than Thomas Hiet did. And we've also only got 1 engineer that is building P-gens and moving towards an air factory. So all in all, it does look like Thomas Hiet's build order is much more optimized than Turin's is, and he will be off to a bit better of a start. Now, this map, Syrtis Major, it's a bit of an odd one. You've got tons and tons of reclaim. You can see all of this if we press Control-Shift. Basically, everywhere there's a hill, there's a pile of reclaim. There are some larger rocks, such as this, and then a couple more scattered around the map. I think there's one in the back there somewhere, a couple up towards the front. And then you've got your standard fight up in the center. Now, if you've played the team version of Syrtis Major, you're probably used to the treble point defense setup across the gap right here. And that is going to get in the way of you moving up and claiming the reclaim. But in the single-player version of this, there is only one. You got to get a couple of artillery up there. You got to hammer the thing down, then you got to reclaim some wall sections and move in. This Quantum Gateway, while it is not completely game-deciding in some cases, it definitely does go a long way. That's a substantial chunk of immediate reclaim that you can use to either get a Tier 2 factory online, which is what I see a lot of people use that mass for, or you can drop simultaneously 2 to 3 T2 mass extractors and scale up your T1 production even more than it already was. We'll see, we've got a Tham and a Scout headed over to the north side. Turin facing off with an Aurora, the much slower but much more broadly ranged tank. And that is going to move up and be able to pick the Selin off, and will alert Thomas Hiet that there are in fact some units there that are guarding the pass. We've also got a Selin moving around the outside edge on the south. Thomas poking and prodding, seeing what's going on, going to kill off that Scout to deny that intel. And then there is a tank and a Scout in the expansion to hopefully guard that from any intrusion. This is one of the key plays in the game, is if you can get in and raid the engineers that are moving to these outside edges in order to deny those mass extractors, you will come out far ahead in the long run. Turin is doing a significantly better job of expanding close to his base. You'll see he's got all 3 of these already as opposed to 2 over there. And then he's already building his mass extractors up here and getting everything online. Whereas Thomas Hiet has expanded more quickly to the far southern edge, but is not running as many units to cover his expansion. So the Turin is being a little bit slower but more methodical, and Thomas Hiet is reaching out on a chance and a prayer and hoping that he can keep all of this under control while his ACU moves into position to guard the pass. That is a hell of a lot of manual reclaim right down there. Good air presence from Turin Bar. We've got 2 interceptors on Thomas's side and 4 from Turin. So despite the fact that he has queued up several additional air factories here. This is leaving Thomas Heat in a bit of a power stretch due to how many factories he is currently running. I would imagine that he is probably in for a bit of a power stall. So we're going to set focus army to 1, see where that takes us. Bingo, first try. That is 64 on 380 total generation. He's fluctuating in the middle of both his power and his mass bars, which is a good shout, but you can see that he is very heavily draining his power as of now. I think he he started constructing the air factory with 3 engineers, which is going to be a very taxing proposition on his current amounts of power production. That is going to force him into a heavy stall. I think that he has reevaluated there. I think he had anticipated those 3 engineers building strictly power, but then they went into the air factory production instead, and now he's had to pause everything to try and sort his economy. That is a very difficult thing to deal with at this critical point in the game. We're going to set focus to 0, and that's going to give us 440 power, moving up to 460, then 80 on 33 mass income. Well-balanced economy in there, though, as I say that, he is dipping down into the stall point, but he is getting a fair bit of reclaim from around the map and will be able to salvage the situation. So Turin, despite having the slower start and looking like he wasn't doing as well as Thomas Heat was, once he got his machine of war running, it is going very well indeed. Especially when you consider that power stall is one of the worst things that you can do in the beginning of the game. Looks like Turin is going to go for some expanding factories to get even more reclaim online. I should have looked at the reclaim numbers while I had the guys open. I am sure it is into the multiple thousands at this point because, like I said, there is a tremendous amount of reclaim. As you can see, this has not been claimed yet, but Turin is doing a very good job of sweeping most of his initial areas. If we take a look at Thomas Heat, he is just about cleaned house on both of his regular expansions, and he's cleaning up around the back as well as taking this chunk out right here. So reclaim is probably fairly close between the two of them, but it is a critical part of your early build to get this done. We've got T1 artillery. We're at the 7-minute point in the game, and those are lining up on both sides to take out that T1 point defense. You will be able to see, even if you have not scouted it, when these buildings go dark, as they do kind of turn a darker shade of whatever color they are after they get destroyed. So you'll be able to see when your opponent makes the dive on this point defense, and when you see it, you sure better get on in there with your ACU and try to make up the difference. Now, there's more units from Thomas Heat, which means that should Turin stand still in order to reclaim some of these buildings, there is a very good potential for him to get shot up and lose a significant amount of HP. But as we see the numbers of Auroras climb across the map, Turin is definitely in a position to defend himself in a timely manner. Turin now sapping this quantum gateway. That is going to be a monumental chunk of reclaim headed his way, and he has already got the upper hand, going for a T2 land factory. That is complete. Now he's rocking on with a T2 power generator to hopefully further boost his income levels. On the other side, we do not have, yes we do, never mind, there is a T2 HQ, and that is producing an engineer right now. So Thomas Heat is running slightly behind where Turin Bar is, and Turin is just going to suck up every last iota of that mass. This is a bad turn indeed, though we are seeing Thomas Heat's machine of war come online. He does have enough factories to deny the Auroras on the north side, though his ACU is a bit hard-pressed on the south here. Turin definitely not holding up his end of the micro bargain. He is, oh my. Auroras are extremely paper when they get in range of the ACU. Their only defense is the kiting action, though with that point defense coming online just in time, Thomas Heat will be pushed back with about half HP. When you're dealing with Auroras, or when you're using Auroras, you have got to maintain control of them. They will take care of you if you take care of them. It just requires a little bit of babysitting, a little bit more APM. But if you take that care, you can simply obliterate mass for mass any T1 force from the other factions. As you're seeing here, this nice little clump of 20 or so Auroras dealing with extreme prejudice with the opposing forces coming in from the gray side. Looks like sensor upgrade is going down on Turin that has already got the range upgrade. Interesting combination, but one that I definitely agree with, considering that there's probably going to be Ilshivas on the field shortly. Ilshivas are, of course, I guess you could call them a tier 2.5 unit. They're exceptionally strong for tier 2, but they are very expensive. And they can compete with early tier 3 from the other factions. It's kind of like the Titan, but on the opposite side of the HQ upgrade. And when those hit the field, you gotta be able to eliminate them. And the gun upgrade doesn't really do that much for you as far as straight combat potential, because even though you're doubling the DPS on your ACU, it takes so long to kill Ilshivas because of their cumulative HP that it's not really worth it. So if you get that sensor upgrade, you've got built-in radar, you can keep your ACU safe, and at the same time, you've got the range to reach out with the overcharges, which are the critical thing anyway. Looks like we have got a lot of tier 2 headed out. Obsidians marching their way towards the front, produced from 3 heavily assisted factories. Might have to straighten out some of the pathfinding issues there, but all in all, this should go relatively well. We've got Ilshivas moving up to the north side. This is going to spell a bit of danger for Turin. He is going to have to come up with some kind of solution to stop this. Ilshivas, of course, able to kite out relatively easily Obsidians, which are slow and lumbering beasts, though they do punch hard if they get into range. They're relatively short range, only fire once per 4 seconds, kind of like a tier 2 Percival, but minus the range, if you could think about it that way. Ilshivas are going to be quite the pain to deal with, but the problem is that Ilshivas toe-to-toe, even Harbingers, relatively well. So any way this goes, Turin is going to have to really abuse that commander, which he is upgrading quite heavily at the moment, in order to gain the upper hand. Looks like we've got a gun upgrade going down on Thomas Heat as well. Of course, the combo upgrade the other 3 factions do get, and we've got 80% on the shield upgrade for Turin Bar. As we watch this move in on the north side, we are going to go ahead and set Focus Army back over to 0. That is going to get us a peek into Turin's world, where we've got 61 income, sucking up a pretty good bit of reclaim there, 15k total, and that is going to be on 1700 power income. So his limiting factor in that shield upgrade, which he has just finished, is actually the mass income, and he is going to now have a hell of a time getting rid of this northern intrusion. There are several Ilshivas in that mix. That is going to be very tough indeed to kill. So we're just going to call it 16,000 reclaim, 67 and 1760 versus 57 and 1340 on 13,000 reclaim. So Thomas Heat is definitely substantially behind in economic power, and also has a much slimmer reclaim reserve. He is depending entirely upon the might of the Ilshivas to drag him out of this nasty situation, and let's just hope that it does hold out for him, because Turin is now approaching with that gun radar shield commander. Something else to remember about that commander is that it does have this gigantic circle of vision that lets you see everything that's going on around your ACU, whether it be an air fight, whether it be ground forces, no matter. You'll be able to keep tabs on a significant chunk of the battlefield. That is almost an 1/8 of the total mass brought under the Omni of that ACU. It is kind of a crazy thing. Let's go back over to the full grand view of the battlefield as we see a pack of Obsidians closing in on the intruding forces that will hopefully be able to deal with the situation, and we are probably going to see the loss. I don't know. It depends on how quickly he can respond to that. May see a T2 Mass Extractor go down on the north side, but definitely a huge punch in the gut to Turin's economy. Turin now moving up on the left-hand side. He's got point defense to contend with, though he did bring quite a large amount of T1 mobile artillery with him, so that will hopefully be able to drag him out of this situation. He is going to be forced back before he can get the killing blow down on the T2 power generator. This could have gone so much better for him as he struggles to overcharge all of the Ilshivas that are around him. There are still 4 standing, and he's lost his entire complement of units. That ACU is no longer in danger, but he could have done so much more with that push. If he could have gotten the T2 power generator down, that would have been a huge blow to Thomas's already less than substantial economy. Turin's shield is shredded out now. I may have actually overestimated the survivability of this ACU. Turin not placing as many overcharges as I would have thought, perhaps taken up with APM elsewhere, dealing with the intrusions hither and yon on the map, as Thomas Hiet swoops in with a load of interceptors to secure air control in a big way. I would not be surprised at all if we see straight bombers, possibly even a tier 2 air shift, if this battle continues to move forward, because Turin, as an Aeon player, has got to keep a handle on air control to protect his flimsy tier 1 units. Turin now soaking up a tremendous blow from the T1 artillery. I can't help but feel like this is a pile of bad micro on his part, whether his micro is directed elsewhere or he is simply off his game today, I do not know. But that is going to be the end for Turin Bar, as Thomas Hiet seizes the win against all odds. That was against the Aurora Might, against someone who had a 10 to 15% economic lead and a reclaim lead through the entirety of the game. A bit better on the tier 2 unit micro. The Ilshiva push really helped him out, and then that raid on the north side taking out the economic potential and also redirecting the units that could have saved Turin's ACU. All of those things played to his favor, allowing Thomas to come out the victor. Well played indeed by both of these guys, and I hope you paid attention to the build orders, to the movements on the map. The timings are critical as far as when you move into claim reclaim and that type of thing. Hopefully this is a learning experience for everybody. All right, again, well played to these guys. We're going to move out and check out the next round of the tournament. We're moving up now to a game from the winner's bracket round 2. Obfuscation versus Jagged Appliance. This is going to be 2200 versus 2000 rated on Eye of the Storm. EOT's the bane of everyone's existence on the ladder, because this is the most gargantuan pain in the buttocks to play. Both of the players are going Cybran. We are going to observe the build orders and hopefully learn something together about how to advance on this godforsaken piece of territory. Jagged Appliance dropping a land factory, and he's going to be going for, looks like, 2 power generators into 2 mass extractors, move for number 3, 3 power generators. So that's 5 for a standard 2 land factory opening, but I would assume that once this engineer comes out and assists on this, we're probably going to get manual reclaim orders headed out to there, and then to, oh, I missed it. There it is. The all-important totem that is worth 300 reclaim right there. That reclaim is going to get him what he needs to advance, and yes, there's the air factory. So the next couple of engineers are going to go out and build a hydro and bring the entire build order together without a power stall. Obfuscation is going for an extremely similar build, but you'll notice that he is perhaps a step or 2 ahead of his opponent. Got some manual reclaim headed out there. Of course, the tree clumps are going to help out tremendously in the pursuit of an air factory. And we've got 2 engineers moving out from both for the hydropower. Obfuscation getting 2 air factories on the line. So the difficulty in this map is gauging how much to put into land, how much to put into air, and how much to put into navy. Which you might say, but Brink, that's obvious, because every map that's not a landlocked map is this way. But on Eye of the Storm, you can genuinely win by air, land, and navy, and you have to have all 3, otherwise you will be crippled. And it is extremely difficult to get the ratios right. So inevitably I end up over-investing into one and my enemy beats me through another. So it's really about gathering intel, seeing what the potential of your enemy is in any one of the three arenas, and then trying to counter and also overpower in one of the three. So it looks like we've got the Hydro done, 2 power generators coming online, rolling into the second air factory for Obfuscation, otherwise known as Bloateer. And Bloateer is going to move his ACU over to the right-hand side, which is kind of the meta. Usually the bottom goes left, the top goes right, and you end up with an ACU in each expansion so that each player ends up with one. And kind of the big idea is to deny the other player one of the expansions in, or at least delay it so that they do not get that mass online. This is going to be a mass extractor pickup, manual reclaim into more mexes and more manual pickups with that engineer very optimistically headed up towards the totem on the other side for that 300 reclaim. Don't know if he'll get it, but hopefully he can. We've also got air scouts out for both players now that will move out across the map and try to anticipate anything that is a-coming. We've also got an engineer headed out to the middle from Jagged Appliance. Of course, 400 reclaim. It is nothing to sneeze at. Very nearly 500 with all of those rocks considered. And then he's going to try to go for a land factory in the middle, whereas his opponent is going for an anti-air turret, a ground-based turret, and a radar. They're kind of overlapping there in the middle with the orders, which is why you can see multiple placed down in the same area. The reclaim at least is going to go to Jagged Appliance because he did get his engineer out significantly more quickly than his opponent did, but it remains to be seen how all of this will play out. So we've got 2 air factories online, running full-time. Jagged trying to power through some P-gens to get those prepared. And now we're just kind of in for a waiting game, because as big as this map is, as spread out as everything is, there are a surprising few number of units due to the restricted quantity of mass extractors in the early portion of the game. So you end up with these poking and prodding maneuvers, working with 2 to 3 interceptors here, a single tank there, that honestly can be game deciding based on what you're able to kill with it. But most importantly, you have got to get your air game up, because raiding bombers, raiding gunships are a horrible, horrible thing for your early game. Looks like we've got a slight air advantage towards Bloateer on those 3 and heavily assisted air factories. It looks like Bloateer has decided to go all in on the air approach in order to lock out his opponent early and then potentially go for a tier 2 airshift. Now, something to remember is that we do have a symmetrical Cybern versus Cybern matchup going here, which means, adventurous little mantis there. Gonna guard that against the helpless engineer that is moving towards it. Cybern is particularly bad with their cruisers at killing off fast-flying air units because they massively overkill anything. It's not like UEF where you can put a Cooper over a cruiser and then it's basically indestructible from the air, and it's not like Seraphim, which has flak, or Aeon, which just has brutally overwhelming amounts of anti-air firepower. It is slightly more helpless towards the air, so it is a feasible thing that you could seize control of the map with T2 air and then never let go of it again, barring eradication from the air by interceptor or ASF. This drop right here is a bit of an adventure, and I approve wholeheartedly. I have done this in a game before, where I dropped the other side and tried to build, and I've seen it done in a couple of games. The general gist of it is you drop a huge clump of engineers, you build point defense, because usually it's an unassisted ACU that is moving over in this direction. He'll not be able to assault you directly, and then you counter build to deny this territory for the initial portion of the game, and it can work out quite beautifully indeed for you if done correctly. So that's going to be the point defense down. Bloateer does know that it's there and will potentially be able to knock it out if it's only a single point defense, but hopefully other units will be online. In the meantime, he is moving to the back in order to try and get a leg up on that build power. And on the left side, we've got a little bit of a run by. So there was an auto gun. I saw the A and got completely distracted into a slip there. we do have the turret going down before it was even built, the engineer eliminated, and now Jagged Appliance is going to be able to put a little pressure on this side, advancing his line ever so slightly. He is also keeping his interceptors in a clump over next to his ACU as a denial tool. Oh dear, ACU getting pounded out, but he was able to kill all of the engineers with a solid overcharge, and now he's just going to back his ACU away, kill all of the dangerous things with that Jester, and then be able to move in with not a problem in the world with his ACU. Now, the Jesters are an interesting move. Cybern does have one of those unique tools at their disposal at the T1 air phase. However, you do need to bear in mind that Jesters have a very low fuel capacity compared to T2 gunships, and they also do not have the HP to be very survivable. So a single flak, or in the case of a T2 land HQ, a single mobile flak, will be able to shred out a significant quantity of Jesters. And also, Jesters have a limited lifespan on the field due to that low fuel amount. However, not having to go for the upgraded HQ lends itself to some very tasty surprise attacks with those T1 gunships. He's using them here to defend against the land units that are intruding, and then he's also using them as a raiding tool to eliminate some of these mass extractors. So Jagged Appliance and Obfuscation trading blows to a certain extent. They've eliminated about an equal number of each other's mass extractors, though I will point out that Obfuscation has lost a few more than his opponent has. And as things stand right now, both players are extremely even. We're seeing a pretty drastic overproduction of anti-air going on, though you cannot blame Jagged as he is facing the flight of the Jesters, and nobody wants to be in that kind of situation, so definitely justified in that respect. And there goes the first Jester casualty as proof that this was a good choice. Jagged Appliance, of course, doubling down on his air production in an attempt to regain control, but in going after the two Jesters, he has sacrificed his turn in the air. He's going to try to pull back out, and no, turning back in for utter destruction. He actually had a get out of jail free card there. With Obfuscation not pursuing properly, he could have gotten most of his interceptors out alive. But that was a bad choice to turn back into the main force. His pretty much sole advantage now is going to be the fact that he has multiple frigates in the water already. However, Obfuscation has moved to a T2 air factory and is now pumping out torpedo bombers that will be able to re-secure the seas in his favor. We've also got Mantis intruding into the base. I just don't see how Jagged Appliance will be able to pull himself out of this. He's losing a transport there with valuable engineers. He's losing his anti-air, which, interestingly enough, the Cybern anti-air is capable of defending itself in the land, though its gun is not particularly strong and also highly inaccurate. But that is going to kill at least one Mantis there. And on the left-hand side, Jagged Appliance is going to move back slightly in the face of an intruding Mantis force. He has not been pushed completely out yet, but he is definitely heavily damaged. He's also trying to get back into the air game with 4 total air factories, as opposed to 3 on the other side running relatively unassisted. So given a few minutes time, he could make a recovery here, but it is going to be difficult to come back from this, seeing as he has lost a significant chunk of his economy to those Jesters and combined land forces. We've also got 3 torpedo bombers moving in. Those are going to go after the Navy in the home front. No, they're going directly after the naval production, interestingly enough, but once those have been sighted, now the torpedo sights are set on the frigates in order to eliminate that threat. Okay, map is settling a bit. Let's go ahead and take a look at the economies of these players. I doubt that it is going to look particularly good for Jagged Appliance, but we're going to take a look regardless. This is Blodier at 60 and 620 income. Actually, much lower power income than I thought he would have at this point. That is run in by the skinnier teeth on economic balance, to be sure. And you'll notice that most of his interceptors are now out of fuel. So Jagged Appliance is going to have an excellent opportunity here to gain the upper hand in a couple of turns. So that is, let's see, a pretty large dip in the power. That means that, yes, T2 Power Generator is coming online. So 60 and 620 with 3K reclaim. Let's set Focus Army to 1. That is 44 and 760 with 2100 reclaim. So definitely behind on the mass, but ahead on the power, which is going to let him get a significant amount of air production done as he is mopping up those out of fuel interceptors over on that side. Obfuscation now falling behind in the air game. I don't know how exactly this is going to fall out, because I have not seen a game flip this thoroughly before. Obfuscation typically tends to go for an overwhelming amount of air in the early game, shifting to T2, and then eliminating his opponent through a series of strategic strikes. I've seen him do it in countless games, but in this particular one, Jagged Appliance, through sheer tenacity and force of will, was able to survive through the initial onslaught, waited out until the interceptors ran out of fuel, regain air control, and now he is starting to regain his territory as well. Both players running neck and neck on score. Of course, still a slight economic advantage to Obfuscation, but things are looking very much evened up, and we basically spent 13 minutes in the game to get nowhere in particular. We've got a couple of Wagners moving across. That is a very interesting development indeed. T2 land, especially of the subsurface aquatic type, that can be very interesting and can throw some wrenches in the works of your opponent's plans, because they'll be able to just pop up at any old place, eliminating choke points and holds in the line, and that is going to cause some rather severe difficulties in defending all of this stuff. I love the Medusa Fire here. It is able to stun that tank, slowing it down ever so slightly. We'll see if it works out again for him. T1 Bomber harassing a Mass Extractor right there. This is one of the reasons that later on in the game, especially once you start seeing Wagners, it's a good idea to build a couple of T1 point defense at the mouth where you expect to get raided, especially on some of these that have 3 Mass Extractors that you need to protect. You're not really able to effectively defend an entire shoreline. However, if you're able to defend the inlet to the peninsula where your mechs reside, you will have a much better chance of keeping things defended. I love the little bit of raiding going on up here from Jagged, eliminating 5 Mass Extractors behind enemy lines and forcing a Wagner over to respond. We've also got Jesters from Jagged. Even though he does have a T2 Air HQ now, he decided that T1 gunships were the way to go to deal with those units in the short term. So once again, we're settling into this somewhat stagnant map state where each player has done a bit of successful raiding, each player's got a little bit of a foothold in a certain portion of the map, and all in all, we've just got to wait it out and see where this thing goes. We do have 2 T1 subs that are going to eliminate the Tech 1 Naval Factory over in Jagged Appliance's home base, which is going to cause a little bit of a problem considering that Obfuscation is now moving for a bit more naval dominance. Also, notice the sheer quantity of air production that is rolling off of the factories right now. Obfuscation definitely took that air loss personally, and he is now doubling down to get every last interceptor he can out of his build power. That ACU moving up to eliminate that threat. At the same time, Jagged Appliance, knowing that the ACU is not in the base any longer, is going to try to poke and prod with some T1 tanks on the other side. However, a T1 point defense is going to put a quick stop to that. Those wrecks are now going to be added into Obfuscation's economy. We've got plenty of Wagners rolling out. Honestly, you don't often see any kind of mass production of high-tech lands on this map. It's usually decided in the T1 phase, and then nobody really messes with it after that. But we're seeing a fairly substantial amount of Wagners roll off of heavily assisted factories, which is just an odd way to go. We're also seeing Wagners roll out from Jagged Appliance, who is, let's be real now, struggling to kill off this T1 point events. In fact, failing entirely. He needs a drop out there to take care of that. We've got torpedo bombers trying to deal with the frigates that are in the water as Blowdeer just swoops in with an overwhelming quantity of interceptors, absolutely slaughters the red inties and moves out with the air wind. That is all it takes, a little bit of production on some non-air-to-air units, and then your opponent completely outmatches you. So we have a total air swap again. We've got the T2 HQ over here along with some production on a T2 factory that is upgrading, interestingly enough. I would love to see these Wagners pursue this frigate, because they could totally get that kill with the torpedoes if they were persistent enough. And you don't want that naval factory to go down at 45% on the T2 upgrade. That would simply be a shame. Here's where Blowdeer typically goes, and I'm surprised that it's taken him 16 and a half, 17 minutes to get this far. We've got the Renegades rolling off the factory to deal with the intruders. Jagged Appliance succeeding in his raid on the center there. As that amphibious tank tries to get back to the water, it is going to be choked out of its last couple of HP by that Renegade. But its work is done. The island is fallen. There is nothing else beneficial to be had from it. And I want to see a lot of air production. We've got T2 power going down in Jagged Appliance's base. That's going to enable him to put some heavy assistance indeed on his air factories as his remaining interceptors fall and the opposing Wagner moves in to complete the raid. That is going to be 5 more mass extractors offline for Jagged Appliance as Obfuscation moves in with engineers in a transport to claim the ones that he has lost. Back and forth she goes over and over again. It's amazing how much damage both of these players are taking and yet still staying in the game. We've got two Wagners again moving up to wipe out another 3 mass extractors on Obfuscation's left flank. So many little things happening all over the map. Single gunship taken out by 4 interceptors before the main force can intervene. Engineers dropped there. More engineers trying to be dropped on the left-hand side. Looks like they will make it despite the frigate anti-air fire. That's going to be another mass extractor claimed. Good on that. And now all those inties, they are going to go down. Blowdeer moving in with 4 Wagners. That is going to be more than enough to wipe out the feeble quantity of T1 that's standing between him and victory on the right peninsula. Looks like we got stealth upgrade on the ACU. Probably looks like an odd thing, but this makes the ACU significantly less snipeable as you have to scout consistently before you go in for any kind of kill. And we do have our first destroyer that's about to roll off the field. Bear in mind, though, that Obfuscation has already got a destroyer in the water, running just slightly ahead of his opponent, who has been clawing back from oblivion this entire game as he's struggling to stay in. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the economic progress of both players once again. Of course, let's see, Jagged Appliance is at 74 and 1300 with 6k reclaim. And we've got 81, 1540 on Blowdeer's side with 8400 reclaim. That's honestly not as big of a gap as I thought there was going to be. But Obfuscation is consistently edging out Jagged Appliance by that 8 to 10% or so, something like that. And that is more than enough in a game such as this to win a war of attrition, especially when you're not able to pull out any fancy special units like an Ilsheva or something. It's strictly unit versus unit of same type, grinding it out. So we've got 1 destroyer and 7 frigates versus 1 destroyer and 4 frigates, which is going to spell a Navy win for Jagged Appliance, which is very surprising as far as I'm concerned, though we do have 5 gunships headed in to go after this destroyer, and Jagged Appliance simply does not have the air to defend it. That is going to be 2k HP there, 43, and shrinking as those frigates are shredded due to focus firing the wrong target that entire time. Looks like we've got 3 remaining. Corsairs moving in as well, and the one and only destroyer is now going to fall to the gunships as we move into another significant air loss for Jagged Appliance. He pulled away too slowly, and Obfuscation was able to swoop in with his triple to quadruple the number of interceptors and simply wipe him from the face of creation. My goodness, that is a hard thing to take. Jagged Appliance does have stealth completed. He is wandering about over there in the wilderness, but I don't think there is much left for him to do. Obfuscation raiding out the mexes once again and moving on with his business of crushing Appliance out of the game. We've got another destroyer moving out. That is going to be 2 in the water, question mark? No, it must have actually been on... No, there are 2. There's the other one. So 3rd is on the way, and those are going to be able to move up and start attacking the main base at some point in the very near future, if of course the Wagners do not wipe it out first. Wagners clumping up on the right side. Those are going to get into a battle formation and move in. Wagners, it is interesting looking at some of the firing cycles that the units have, because Wagners deal a significant amount of damage in this once per, I'm not even sure, 4 or 5 seconds. I would have to look it up. It is very infrequent. They fire this one gigantic bolt every once in a while, and then the rest of the time they use the dinky little cannons that are kind of like a secondary weapon. So it is possible to waste the alpha strike of a Wagner, oddly enough. Interceptor's not going to get away scot-free, but they did succeed in taking out the better part of the gunships. Jagged Appliance taking the Control K there, throwing out the GG. I do not blame him in the slightest, to be honest. I was wondering how long it was going to take. I have to commend Obfuscation here, because he played in an overpowering fashion from the very beginning of the game. But I also have to give out commendation to Jagged for not giving up, which is the most critical part of playing a strategy game. As you could see at multiple instances in that game, he was able to bring Obfuscation to a standstill and also counter raid, doing at most times equal damage and almost bringing himself back into line with the same amount of economy on both players. Jagged Appliance at no point was out of this game. He was on the back foot, yes, but that tenacity dang near brought him back to be able to stay in the winner's bracket of this tournament. Well played to both of these guys. Very well done. Hope everybody learned something from the way that this played out, because again, this is an extremely difficult map to play. And I am going to head on out to the next game. We're up to round 3 in the winner's bracket. This is going to be Iseki-chan. I have no idea how to pronounce that, and I don't care. It's Farms. And Tamamo going head-to-head. 2,300 rated players. I guess you could say that that really is the cream of the crop as far as FAF goes. It's identical Seraphim matchup with identical ranks on a map that is symmetrically split, so this is definitely as easy, or as balanced, I suppose I should say, as you can possibly get. Let's take a look at the map first. This is Pelagial version 2. Lots of reclaim out, mostly in the form of tree clumps, with the exception of these civilian buildings right here, which are pretty important to pick up. They're not a monumental amount of mass, but they are significant enough that they should be incorporated into your build order. Each player has an island that they start on that has a total of, I think, 16, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13. No, it is 13 mexes. So 13 mexes on each island, and then about that many again, possibly a couple more on the expansion island that they typically go for. Now, what I often see is the ACU walking to one island or the other in order to help secure it. I usually walk mine to the south side, and then you'll have various and sundry naval battles and hover battles and amphibious T2 battles and whatever else goes on in order to determine the winner. T2 Air is exceptionally strong on this map, as it is on most naval and or large maps. So bear in mind that you gotta build everything. Tamamo is gonna be dropping 4 power generators after the hydro, rolling into an air factory, which I'm sure will be assisted very heavily, going for a transport to move those engineers over to a more conducive location to expansion. We've also got manual reclaim going down on all of the tree clumps around here. A very, very good call. And then that is going to be picking up 3 mass extractors, moving back over to reclaim and attack move. And we've got, yes, the transport rocking out. On the other side, it looks like we've got air units coming out first. Farms is going for a bit more of the aggressive approach rather than the expansion approach, and he has gone for 6 power generators ahead of his air factory so that he can assist mightily without any fear of the stalls. So that's going to be headed directly across. He is going to pick up that transport with the scouts, and though the transport may deliver its payload, it will not get another opportunity. Although it looks like Farms may have actually missed the transport with the interceptor that is now circling right over here. And he's moving the air scout back to retrace the steps. Very interesting. Farms flew right past that transport and completely missed it. I rarely see him do a thing like that. Okay, so we've got multiple engineers dropping down. And then it looks like we've got a T1 bomber that's headed across as well to provide just that extra layer of denial, as if the first round of interceptors was not enough. Wow, that is some wide distribution of the engineers. It is going to take a while for that bomber to kill everything there, though it looks like the engineers are being spread out. Farms is going to only be able to bomb one and not both with the initial pass. That is worth the sacrifice of an interceptor in order to go after that bomber and eliminate it. Of course, the one good thing about the Seraphim bomber is that they have the lowest AoE out of any of the bombers, so they are not very easily able to knock out multiple engineers and or mobile engineers as some of the other factions are. So this island shall remain safe. The transport has come out alive for the most part, I think, as long as no, never mind. Those interceptors are targeted with laser focus upon that transport. Really now. I try to give you the benefit of the doubt, and you're still just gonna shun me there. That transport just flew right in between the interceptors and did not get locked by either one. Words fail me. I do not understand. Anyway, we've got the same deal happening with Farms just a few minutes later in the game on the right-hand side. So, though he did go for that very brutal early air build, his expansion is significantly slower, and Tamamo is going to be able to bring in a superior level of mass and also get his ACU out to the other island more quickly in order to deny that expansion. Farms is going for a second air factory already and apparently forgot this mass extractor existed because he's now having to move another engineer back that way. And we've also got naval factories that are now being built by Tamamo, who is queuing up significantly earlier than Farms is. I'm kind of failing to see where this game is headed. New load of engineers from the same lightly damaged transport that dropped the initial run. Impressive indeed. And then the ACU moving onto the island. This is a hilarious way for the early game to fall out. I'm just saying. It's rare to see this many little hiccups happen in a game like this. So we've got a tier 2 mass extractor, 2 are upgrading on this side, but 1 is already completed in Farm's base, though he is not going for any additional ones. So he was able to get that very early indeed off of the reclaim, and good for him doing it. We've got transport headed out with an engineer to pick up the expansion there, and Tamamo eliminating another mass extractor, most likely before it's even paid for itself. I would love to see some land factories go down around this ACU, because inevitably that ACU is going to need some assistance. We've already got 4 freaking land factories planned over on this side. Those are going to be able to drastically out-combat a single unassisted ACU, especially one that doesn't even have a gun upgrade or anything. And that is going to spell doom for Tamamo's hold on this island. Now, I will point out that, again, this island is significantly better developed and earlier developed than this island is. So I'm not exactly sure, except for lack of power and possibly lack of air production, why Tamamo is behind in score. Although there, he has now popped up. But he is at 57 income with 800 reclaim, and Farms is at 1800 reclaim and 51 mass per tick. So actually not as far ahead or far behind as I thought he was, since he was able to get in all that extra mass. Now Farms is going to take full advantage, I'm sure, of his Zooies. Those are going to start moving out, probably exclusively Zooey production, except for a handful, and I do mean a handful of tanks that he's going to use to engage in land battle. On this other side, we do have our air forces meeting in the center, decisively favoring Farms in that little spat there. And I love this. I love it. We've got T1 artillery dropping in on the mexes over here. Now, Farms has completely forsaken any type of navy, and that does worry me slightly, because while he may be able to hold things exceptionally well with his T1 artillery for the time being, that is going to present him with some serious problems later on. If his opponent has already got 7 frigates in the water and he is just now starting to build navy, it is going to take a lot of time in order for that to play out in his favor, if it ever does. But what I do see is a comm drop. This is going to be a lot of fun. We've got a tier 2 transport coming out, and one reason why I could think that he needs a T2 transport and a T2 ACU all in the same bout, unless he's planning for T2 artillery drops. But the T1 artillery drops from Tamamo are already screwing him up badly. We've got T1 engineers in the back as well that are going to try and capture a mass extractor, but unfortunately they are going to be put out of their misery long before they can actually get that done. Farms, oh dear lord. This build, he's going for the tack launcher, which means that he's going to drop his ACU somewhere roundabouts here. And he is going to go for tack launches against his opponent's island. Now, the tactical defense is already being built over here. I think that Tamamo has an inkling of what is going on and will not be made a fool of. But that's still something that is potentially devastating if it gets through. 95%, we'll wait and see where exactly that heads off to. Tamamo streaming artillery across. One thing to bear in mind is that since he does have frigates out and about, he will be able to deny, for the most part, completely any attempt to move artillery across, unless it is a lot of artillery. And I mean a lot of artillery. But there are torpedo bombers out now that will be able to deal with that, and Farms does still have air control. So there's the ACU moving in there. It looks like he's moving around the south edge. No, now taking a bit more of a direct path. Farms does have air superiority in numbers, but not by as much as I thought he did. So a good little turn here from Tamamo, and a little assistance from some anti-air should go a long ways in gaining control. You'll notice that Tamamo split his interceptors in 3 directions to prevent Farms from seeing exactly where he was splitting and was able to pull away almost 100% of his interceptors. But now this ACU is going to drop in very close indeed to the main base. There's the air engagement. ACU is down, and the transport is shot down as well. And here goes the TAC launches. But again, this is built, and if we switch over to farms, he does not have it scouted. So he's now spent all of the mass, and he's spent all of the time to get that ACU into this extremely precarious position where he has to guard it, and he's not going to be able to kill a damn thing. But the Natha coming in for the swooping kill on that TMD is going to throw a wrench into the works for Tamamo. Natha moving back around onto the T2 power generator. I don't think that is a one-shot kill, and it is not. 2/3 of the HP. As that moves around again, we've also got T1 artillery being dropped in, exploiting this frenzy of activity around the base to use the confusion to swoop in. That T2 power generator and the newly constructed secondary TMD are going to go down, but the base will hold fast. I don't think that was a critical blow by any means, but that might have been. Tamamo getting knocked down to 800 power income due to the loss of the second T2 power generator. Not only that, but Farms was able to overkill it with the amount of artillery shots dropped in order to eliminate the wreck as well, so he's not able to speed build that T2P gen again. He's gonna have to get build power to the back end here in order to get that P gen up. We've also got multiple T1 mobile anti-air, a T2 torpedo launcher firing on Farms ACU, but that is now going to be a redirected focus onto the torpedo launcher at hand as we see more artillery moving around the back edge. This is the most disrupted game that I've seen in a very, very long time as the Natha comes in on a suicide run, and it is going to snatch the TMD, and that is going to open this base up wide for exploitation by Farms TAC missile launcher. That's going to hit hard, and it is going to hit fast, and I hate to see the damage that shall be wreaked upon this base by it. TAC missile shooting long, going after the halfway constructed T2 power generator to shut down that attempted recovery mechanism. Over on the other side of the map, we are seeing some T1 artillery dropped, but unfortunately it is getting completely erased before it can do much good. Back over to the other side, TAC launcher taking out T2 mass extractors and other targets of interest. Looks like, I'm not even going to try to guess where that thing's headed. More T2 mass extractors, that's where it is. Tanks being produced on the other side. I would definitely be going for some artillery if that were me. And the interceptors continue to swarm about over Farm's head. Tamamo simply not able to get things online quickly enough to deal with that ACU that is now walking around the outside edge to snipe off mass extractors around the TMD. This is the biggest troll commander that you could possibly throw at the enemy forces, and it is a nightmare to deal with. But now we've got a lot of frigates, and we've got a lot of potential Navy coming out. T1 subs hammering away at that ACU. Honestly, I think that he could probably walk to the other side and out of the water before that paltry number of subs was actually able to do anything to him. But he does need to be careful. So we've got a shield up, no power stall, rebounded wreck off the shield. That is such a cool animation that comes through. And now finally we've got T2 power that is protected in a real way with TMD going down everywhere. So Tamamo is still in the game. He's only slightly behind Farms. On economy, he's managing to bootstrap his power back into existence. We've also got multiple T1 subs pursuing Farms ACU. Tamamo has T2, as does Farms. Although Farms, with that TAC missile, is capable of firing at the ACU from close range in order to deal damage. So definitely something to bear in mind. Farms taking it for granted that he is going to be able to get out of the water, not devoting his torpedo bombers to the defense of his ACU, even though that would seem to be something that needs to happen. He's about to walk out into this area where there are a lot of tier 1 units, and I'm not entirely sure why he's not devoting his torpedo bombers to saving the ACU, because now, with them on the other side of the map, many of them are going to be shot down by the T1 interceptors before they can move to the other edge. Even though Tamamo is drastically behind in total air production, the snipe is real. We've got 4 T1 subs with a single torpedo bomber. The pass comes in for the 500 or 600 damage that is worth, down to 1800 HP, 16, 15. Air coming into the rescue as torpedo bombers swoop in, eliminating the first of those subs. Farm's trying to build a factory to deny the sub damage, but no! He is going to get eliminated. The troll was too strong. He just couldn't save himself. Honestly, a good way to go with the ACU, but overextending yourself in that fashion can lead to the most dire of consequences, as we've seen here. And honestly, I think that the troll just got away from him because he had the means to protect his ACU. He could have saved himself. He could have gotten himself back out. There's a million different things that could have gone differently, but unfortunately, sometimes when you embrace the troll it giveth, and the troll also taketh away, and in this particular case, it taketh. Tamamo is going to move on through the winner's bracket up to the semifinal, and Farms is going to drop to the loser's bracket. That is going to wrap everything up for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like and share it with someone. If you want to support the channel, catch the streams, or join the Discord, check out the links in the description. Thank you all for being at least partially insane, and I will see you in the next one.